Welcome to Riffs on Writing with Andy and Caroline, where we talk about writing and publishing in 10 minutes or less.
And today we're talking about how long it should take you to write your book. Short answer is as long as it takes.
Conversation.
Say more, Caroline.
I mean, I think it depends on what you're writing. If you, and it depends on what your goals are with your writing, but I think it really depends on what you're writing. I was working on a book that has a lot of historical facts, family, took a lot of research, took a lot of my own soul searching and discovery. And altogether, even though I had a lot of material, I'm going to say that book probably took about 3 years, maybe more to write. And that's not a lot because people write their books for 10 plus years, 20 years, maybe. And it in all genres, I think. But I think if you're doing research, it's probably going to take more. If you're not writing primarily, like if that isn't your primary job, if you have another job or a family, it's going to take longer.
Yeah. I write a book a month if I'm really doing a good job. Like if I'm really focused. But I write cozy mysteries, right? Or romantic comedies. And they're very formulaic, right? Like I kind of know when the beats have to be hit. I know how many characters I have. And now I write in series. So I've actually also done all the world building earlier. So I don't have to do that. So I can write fast. And because I write with the purpose of making a living, I have to write to a certain speed. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody needs to do that. Not everybody should do that, right? Like I've been doing this a long time. I can write pretty fast and it still be pretty good. I mean, sometimes it's good by the time it comes out anyway. But if you're writing literary fiction, that can take a lot longer. It takes longer to build the world or to get the phrasing right. And like Caroline said, if you're writing research or anything that requires you to bring in a lot of outside sources, that's just going to take longer. When I write creative nonfiction, the book I wrote, The Slaves Have Names, it took me 2 years. Yeah. I mean, and that was when I was doing it primarily full time because I had to do all of this research and still write. So, and some of it too is dependent on how your brain works. Maybe your brain doesn't process that fast, that quickly enough to translate it into words. And that is fine. Better maybe sometimes. So yeah, there's really no right way.
And also, it's also experience too, I think. It's, at this point, you've written so many books that you know exactly, you're so organized with it, you know exactly what you need to sit down and do and when and how long, and you have it all sort of framed out for yourself. But if you're a newer writer and you're just attempting this, give yourself some slack and understand it doesn't have to be that fast. And it's probably better that it isn't because, and then when you send it to an editor, for example, there'll be a lot less revisions if if you've gone over it yourself, if you've given it to beta readers. Writing is a craft. I have a writing instructor that I know, and I love what she says. It's the only art where there's no prodigies. So, you have your dance prodigies, you have your music prodigies, you have your visual arts prodigies, these kids that come out of nowhere and they're unbelievable and no one knows how. There are no writing prodigies. It's time. It's time and work.
Yep. And I will say too, there's lots of sort of esoteric factors in this speed, right? If you're a person who is writing under a lot of stress, for whatever reason, it is more difficult to be creative. Like that is just the truth of how it is to be human in the world. So that's a factor. If you have a small child who is interrupting you every 10 minutes, it's going to take you longer. Trust me. I have a 5-year-old, if it is that you are doing this in 15-minute spurts, like in between meetings, it's also going to take you longer. It just depends on how your life is. And that's not, I just want to be very clear and say, like, if somebody tells you that you should write your book in a certain period of time, that's not a person I would recommend you listen to, because they can't know what you need for your life. You need to find what rhythm and pace works for you and go with that.
And we all know NaNoWriMo, so National Writing Month, which starts in November. And it's that idea that you should be able to write a book in the month. So you set your word goals for every day, and you can track them. And it's almost like a game where you're playing with other people to see where other people are, so that you can get your award at the end of the month. We should, and people do it. I know somebody who basically that's how she writes her books, but that's what she tells people. And she's not wrong. She does write her books that way. But what she really does is she plots them out that way. She fills them in that way for that month. But then she still has a few months of going back and editing and filling in the blanks. And then, they get sent to an editor, and then the editor comes back with more, plot holes or fixes, or, we'll talk about editors in a different conversation, why everybody should be using them.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. So, if you can sit down and plot your book out very carefully, the actual writing might be shorter. So you have to also think about what kind of a writer you are that way. That's another facet to it. For me, for example, I like to write and just write down a whole bunch of ideas and then think about it and then go back and plot out my book and see what works when, how, why, what. But
right.
It just
and
means that
the opposite. Like I just power through. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's what
I
I'm
just
saying.
power
So
through.
it just depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm linear. I start at the beginning, I write through to the end, and then I go back and fix it. Right. But there's all kinds of ways that people write. And I write differently when I write nonfiction than when I write fiction. And I write the difference, like I said, a different speed. It's all about who you are in the world as a writer and what works for you. Like that's what you should do. So don't feel the pressure to do what I do or what Caroline does, or feel like because somebody does something, you should do it that way too. You should do what works for you. Absolutely.
Exactly. So you do you. And if you need help with your book, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to us. Make sure that you like this and that you tell all your friends, and we will see you next time.